Do you guys know what the Australian dream is? Have you heard of that before?
No.
No?
No.
My understanding, it's just owning a home, having a family.
Yeah, so pretty much it's basically just like the Australian government kind of has it stated as just the ability to own a piece of land as a home. I feel like every Australian family to be able to achieve that. Like your own block of land was ideally the symbol of success. And just with our current kind of living situations, I was just thinking, do you think that's something that is still obtainable? Something that still exists?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. 100%.
Lovely. So that's kind of the common consensus. So like the BBC has done a lot of articles recently how like there was one titled like the Australian dream is dead, you know, very kind of bluntly putting it. Do you think it's kind of a nationwide thing, or just because we're in the cities it's a bit more aware for us?
I think it's definitely a Sydney thing. Like Sydney's like the second most like expensive place to live in right now in the world. Which is insane.
Only been by Hong Kong.
Yeah. Like by just as well. So it's like crazy. I don't know. I can't speak for like other places in Australia, but for like Sydney, yeah, I think that dream dead down the drain. I think like I don't think I could ever own a home because like, you know, rent increases like so often.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think about moving, but like my whole life is in Sydney. So
Okay.
that's like kind of unrealistic for me at this point, but
Yeah. Well, just on that, could you tell me roughly, you don't have to tell me like exactly where, but the suburb or kind of the area that you are renting in?
I live out west, so Parramatta area.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah.
So there was a study that kind of did a focus on Auburn. And in general, just within the city, using it as kind of like a midpoint between like outer suburban living, inner west, and the CBD.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the poorer native-born population moving away from the city centre to move to more affordable suburban areas, making way for immigrants and refugees to enter this high-priced market. And even despite their financial position being, you know, immigrants or refugees, they're willing to accept and tolerate housing conditions that is deemed unacceptable to their native-born citizens. This article was in 2007, and that has very much changed like our climate since then. Do you think that's still kind of relevant whatsoever?
I think with like immigration, like especially out west from what I've seen, yeah, like coming from like a POC family, they just put up with anything just so they can like, you know, have somewhere to live, you know what I mean? Especially like because I live in like the Auburn area, you'll go past like apartments and things that are so run down, like so dingy, but they're like, it's full of people.
Yeah.
And they're all immigrants.
With like the Australian dream earlier being like you owning a block of land, and you kind of guys think that's not really obtainable anymore. How do you feel about apartment living? Because that's something that's historically been in Australia very anti-apartments. And you can see that in kind of like our cities, how they're kind of very spread out and very flat, unless you like right in the CBD.
Yeah, that's changing as well. Like that's something that's, you know, apartments are springing up everywhere. You know, main roads that just have historically just been shop fronts now have, you know, 4 or 5 levels of apartments on top of them. It's sort of springing up everywhere. Large blocks of land are just getting, you know, dozens of houses demolished to make way for more houses. It's happening a lot near like a lot of train stations as well. The government's designated certain areas that are within a certain kilometre radius to that developers can build high-rise towers on. Well, not high-rise, but apartment blocks. So they've been going around to all the residents near the train stations and just trying to buy up large swaths of land.
Do you think that the government, like for instance here, there was this article written in 2001 arguing that like education, health and social services or security are like the foundations and the socially acceptable things that our government should be doing. But housing is kind of left alone. It's not really included as those main 3. Do you think it's just as important? Do you think the government should be playing a much bigger role? Or do you think that's something that's more affected by the private sector and should be left like that?
We just had an election as well, and like one of the biggest issues, especially for young people, was housing. And that was in a lot of the
Campaigning.
So there's a lot to go on about the election, but I'm going to bring it way back. But now that you introduced the whole thing about the government, so in 1948, the Prime Minister Ben Chifley at the time tried to introduce into into legislation into the Commonwealth to give power to the federal government to control the market in terms of rent and housing prices. And that was denied by the Australian people. Do you think if the government, like you said, since housing and rent was such a forefront of this election, do you think you would see the same outcome, something different?
I don't think I would.
No?
I think a lot of the housing things that were coming, it was coming from like our generation.
Okay.
So like younger people.
Yeah.
I think because Australia's a aging like population, a lot of them are already homeowners who want to make more money for themselves. I don't think that would go well still. I think I don't think the housing crisis is taken as seriously by like the older generation than it is with like people like us. Yeah.
What were the specifics of that 1948 policy that you were saying?
Well, if anything, it was more just a comparison because recently in 2023, Spain introduced a very, very similar thing. Sorry to
No.
segue, but I'll go back to it. They introduced a very, very similar thing, which basically put a cap at how much renters could, charge. And so that was like, it was introduced in 2023, 2% in 2023, 3% in 2024. So do you think this would be slightly more beneficial?
100%.
Yeah?
A lot of my friends that are renting have to live in share houses because of how much their renters or their landlords increase the rent. So it will be like to ridiculous like prices to like $750 for a studio apartment.
Yeah.
That's mental. I think landlords take it a little bit too far, and I think they have all the power in the world. They can just get all the money they want. So I think introducing like a cap like that would be like really beneficial.
Yeah. What do you guys think about in terms of like the expansion that Australia has? Do you think it should be a lot more policy influenced? Like kind of, sorry, I know you're about to.
No.
Kind of going back to that original idea of the Australian dream, but just spreading out, or kind of focusing on fixing the current issues we have and therefore going through like the apartment route?
I think if we don't fix the issues we have now, then we don't learn from those issues and the issues continue. Do you know what I mean? Like if you look at places like Marsden Park, that have all those houses like that look the exact same, like concrete jungles.
Yeah.
That's kind of how they want to like expand it. And like places like that get so hot and like just so mucky, and like things like climate change get into it and blah, 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 blah. Like I just don't think it's a smart idea. I think, we definitely need to fix current problems before we make more problems in that kind of sense. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting comparison. You have people who are willing to move their entire lives to chase that kind of Australian dream, come here and accept that. But then again, that shouldn't be what we're presenting as the acceptable level of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Like, what kind of a dream is it where you have a house that doesn't even function for you? When my grandmother moved from South Africa to St. Clair, which is like Penrith area, they bought their house. They kind of only finished paying the mortgage. This was like in the 1970s they bought their house. They only finished paying the mortgage I think when I was born. So it took a while for them to pay that mortgage. But it was mainly because their income was very low, all that kind of stuff. But I think my uncle, once he moved out of Australia to Jakarta and he started earning more money, he started paying the mortgage and then he just paid it off after that. But it was always a up battle and that was long ago. So imagine how it is now. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think the Australian dream has ever been real?
No.
No?
No. I think and this is coming from a person of color view, I just don't ever see that as real. I don't think my family has ever seen that as real.
Yep.
We've been stuck out the West for pretty much my whole life because it's so expensive to move forward. And like I was saying before, how immigrants that move from other countries to here to find that dream for themselves.
Yeah.
They never really get it because they end up just having to put up with bad landlords and sorry to use this, but shitty conditions. You know what I mean? So from what my perception, no, it's never been a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I think definitely it was real, but the window is closed. If you missed out, you missed out. You can get lucky and your parents can give you what they got, but if you're someone who's maybe moving to Australia,
Yeah.
the dream ain't for you. It was designed for a specific niche of people.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
over.